Welcome everyone to the D20 Play YouTube channel. We're going to take a look at what I learned prepping and running Where the Dead Wait, which is in the Eberron Oracle of War Adventurers League adventure. And the players loved this one, said it really felt like a cabin in the woods type feel. It includes waves and waves of undead, searching a old abandoned haunted house, and finding a way to finally defeat the waves of undead that keep pouring in. So, fun adventure. Let's go over what I learned. Each of these adventures comes with like a little broadsheet page. So this is the one that comes with this adventure. It mostly just consists of some foreshadowing of the epic that comes up after this. And I'm not sure what the floating fortress approaching is a foreshadowing of. Maybe we'll see that in the later adventures. Those are always fun. I share those with the players before each game. So here's my Roll20 page. I run these adventures in Roll20. I can run really fast combats Roll20. I really like it, and got a lot of control over the appearance of the tabletop and such. And these macros here on the side can customize to be what I want for the adventure. So this adventure, the knowledge that's available in this adventure, there's some stuff about the Mournland, so I'll share that ahead of time with the players. And here's kind of an example of what I share with the players. DDAL-EB-03, Where the Dead Wait. And they have the general knowledge of everyone. There's some knowledge of the Wolf of Carnath, which I assumed everyone would have. I didn't restrict that to just soldiers and the like, although I could have. Maybe people with religion skill would know that. But I shared that with everyone. And then only some of the players I shared this information with, the Arcana information about the Mournland and its effects. And then anyone with Arcana or History or Nature or Religion, I share this information about the Draconic Prophecy. So it comes up in the adventure. And this is just a way to let the players organically share information in character during the adventure. Kind of makes it seem a little more real, so I like to do that. The adventure itself, in this campaign in general, features a lot of artificers. I've had a lot of players play artificers, and I'm learning a couple of things about them. So steel defenders that battlesmiths have first show up in this adventure if they're third level characters, and had one go down, and then I had to ask the question, wait, does it get death saves? And as far as I can tell, they do. It is a creature. It's a construct, but it's a creature. Whereas the Eldritch Cannons are objects, and they are destroyed at 0 hit points. Another thing about the Eldritch Cannon that's interesting. Oh, and the Steel Defender's interesting thing is they act after the Artificer. If they're in the shape of a dog, they could in theory be ridden, and so there's a gray area about whether or not they can all act together with the Artificer, because it specifically says they come after the Artificer. The Eldritch Cannons, they specifically say that they can be moved to an unoccupied space. So can a tiny Eldritch Cannon climb up on a character? Doesn't appear so, but it does say they can be held in one hand. So information I'm learning about artificers. There's another thing about artificers that'll come up later here in this discussion. Okay, so when the characters are going from the last adventure to this adventure, they have these 4 NPCs with them. They have Callie and Nella and Dervo and Sprocket. So you want to have tokens ready for those guys. And if you played the last adventure, the dwarf Dervo, he had 2 levels of exhaustion. So just to continue the continuity, I kept him with 1 level of exhaustion. This adventure, in theory, happens right after, like the day after the previous adventure. So in theory, hit dice spent might not be fully recovered, but I just chose to have everyone at full hit dice to start the adventure. Alright, so the first encounter starts out with the players traveling through the Mournland, and they get ambushed by undead, skeletons and zombies, and then eventually an ogre zombie. Oh, and before I go any further, spoilers, don't watch this until you've actually played the adventure. So the first thing to clarify is if anyone has any spells cast first thing in the day, and also where is the Oracle of War? By default, I was having a couple of the Grey Dogs, the NPCs, carrying it, but a couple different groups already had bags of holding from Artificer abilities, and so some of them had them in the bag of holding. Just good to make sure you know where that's at. Maps for the adventures. So these maps that you see here and these pictures, these are all from, I think, 3rd or 4th edition Eberron books that I had. So I copied and pasted those there just to give players an idea where they're at. The adventure takes place in the moorland as the players are traveling from Calazart here back to Salvation, which is just on the edge of the moorland, not shown on the map. I put a copy of the map of Salvation, should they return there, and the broadsheet that they found. And then hidden from their view in the grayed out area, it's black to the players, I have the adventure record and the handouts and the maps. So these maps that I have come from STM Roleplay. They have color maps for each of the Oracle of War adventures so far. Here is the ones for Where the Dead Wait. There's 3 maps in that. And they have a bundle that has all the maps for the whole first 4 adventures. So that's a handy savings if you're going to run all 4. The only recommendation I'd make to the maps, they're beautiful, but only recommendation I would make is make the walls a little bit thinner, STM Roleplay if you're listening, and line them up right on the grid lines. You can see they are all on a grid line, they just are offset to one side or the other. So I just told the players when they were playing, these walls are running down this line, for example. They're running down the line that they're adjacent to. And the doors can be a little hard to spot, so I made sure to point that out to the players later where the doors were. The first encounter, the players are ambushed by undead. They can see the house up on the hill. I just kind of clued them in that there wasn't a steady stream of undead around them just yet. So they didn't have to run for their lives to the house. They could fight the undead that they were facing and then run to the house. Then when they get to the house, there is a lot of exploration. So I finally settled on the 3rd time I ran this, doing the exploration this way. I told the players, okay, you don't know how long before the undead that are all around converge on the home. So we're going to do 10-minute chunks of time, and you tell me each what you want to do with your first 10 minutes. 10 minutes is a good chunk of time because that's the time it takes someone to do a ritual. With 10 minutes, they could thoroughly search a room. With 10 minutes, they could set up several traps. With 10 minutes, they could generally search the whole house. And so I found out what everyone was doing, and then once I knew that, kind of like running old school rounds of combat, once I knew what everyone was doing, then I kind of adjudicated how it happened, because there's several things that can trigger, and you kind of want to know where everyone is in the house. And there's lots of investigation checks to make, and if someone's been in 10 minutes in a room, they'll find pretty much whatever's there. But if they're quickly moving through the house, they'll have to make that check. And then there's some things they can find, like in the basement there's a journal they can find that can take more time to explore. So I broke the house down where they could take 10 minutes to search the whole place, or 10 minutes to thoroughly search any given room or any quadrant outside of the house. That seemed to work the best and pretty fast. This adventure is long. It took me every time I ran it just slightly over 4 hours, and I run combat very, very fast. So this can be quite a long adventure for someone trying to run it. So watch out for that, watch out for timing, try and move things along during the exploration. And one interesting thing in the exploration is there's a room up here, well, the office, has a drawer of the desk which got a scroll of false life in it. But that scroll of false life does not appear in the treasure listing. So a good little clue in for the players you could give to maybe encourage them to use that is say something like that. You know, this looks like it's almost ruined, probably won't survive the trip back to Salvation. Use it now or lose it type of thing. And that'll kind of clue them in that, hey, we can use this now and we're not going to miss anything. There's a later one that crumbles to dust if touched, so I don't know why it's even described as what spell it is. I'm not sure if there's a way a player could preserve it. No one came up with one while I was running it. That one is in the bedroom. In the bedroom, when that wardrobe's opened, everyone that starts within 30 feet of the head, and that doesn't specify if it goes through walls or not, but I assumed it would go through some, has some saves to make, so it's important to know where everyone's at when they start triggering things. Each time they finish a phase of exploration, there's a wave of undead that come upon them. And don't forget, I think I did one time after one of the investigation phases that they all get a hero point right before the wave of undead comes. So the waves of undead, I try and always make when combatants come into the combat in the middle of the combat, I try to have them come at the start of the round, but in initiative order. Because I don't think it's fair for a slow zombie to come into combat and take their action before anyone can react to them. I try and put them in a place where they can see the players can see them, and then they slot into the initiative so the players could see them and attack them before they get their attack in. So I try and have waves come in at the start of the round in initiative order. Timing, it gives when each wave will come. The next wave appears when 2 undead remain, or the next wave appears when 2 undead remain, etc. I tried to watch this to try and time it. I would have them come a little bit earlier if necessary, if I thought that all undead would be destroyed before the next round was over. So on occasion I do it slightly before when it's set. Because if anything, this thing needs to run fast, and so you don't want downtime necessarily. Alright, now not listed in the explorations, but as a sidebar at the end, is what happens if the Oracle tries to be activated. So keep that in mind. I put a little note for myself, basically by each exploration phase, just saying, hey, they might look at the Oracle. But you don't remind them until the second exploration. It's important to have it listed by the second exploration so you do remind them that that takes place. And then don't forget at the end of the second exploration when the light flares, because that's a pretty cool cinematic scene there. So during the explorations, they could find a journal that basically tells them how to activate the flare in a reverse way. They'll send the undead away. And that's basically the key to surviving this adventure. It tells them to go and destroy a bunch of foci, and a lot of them are identified by tattoos of a wolf. I didn't see anything about a tattoo of a wolf on the stomping feet, so I added that. So that's something to keep in mind, because those are one of the things to destroy. And then the journal also says that once you've destroyed the foci, you can take a magical blade and cut Carla or Curla. Let me double check. Curla her witch. If you cut Curla her witch and spill drops of her blood, it'll stop the flare or change the polarity of the flare. Well, in Eberron, there'll be a lot of magical blades, because if anyone's playing Artificers, they can enchant a blade by this time. So I kind of tweaked it a little bit to make it so it was specifically Jagged's Arm Blade, which I think was the intent, but just something to keep in mind. That'll cut the adventure real short if you let someone use any magical blade. It'll be over before it even starts. Alright, so you've got through the first exploration, you've got through the first wave, then the second exploration. They've probably tried to activate the Oracle, and there's where you have to look ahead to how the Grey Dogs will behave during that time. When they activate the Oracle, the Grey Dogs, and I made it specifically the Dwarf, will be just full of avarice, trying to connive of ways they can take that piece of salvage that's going to be worth a fortune. And so I like to roll things like wisdom perception checks and wisdom insight checks ahead of time using the player's abilities, but not letting the players know I did it. So everything can kind of organically happen. And if there's something that should trigger them insight-wise, I can describe it in a way that seems realistic other than, hey, they're lying. So do that. And then real important is to note that when the betrayal happens, Callie Alrand, it says, is noticeably hesitant about betraying the characters. So I basically made it so everyone noticed that. I did it right at the start of the first round that the betrayal was happening, so that the players could react in a way that could stop it and get Callie on their side, or at least try to get Callie on their side. Alright. And then also, of course, the Draconic Prophecy will trigger when the Oracle of War malfunctions, and that's where the knowledge ahead of time of what the Draconic Prophecy is could be cool and done organically. And then also, I was running the Epic after this adventure, so instead of having the Oracle start saying third protocol activated, I just said it was malfunctioning. And then at the end of the Epic, I included that last sentence about, this is on page 13, about the Oracle trembling and saying third protocol activated. So watch out for that there if you're going to run the Epic. The second wave. By wave number 3 comes Jagged. And so when I thought I had about 1 round or 2 rounds left in wave 2, I started having the players here distant chanting of blood for jagged and the direction it was coming from, so they could kind of start to, there's a little bit of foreshadowing, and they could regroup into the right position. For the fleeing into the moorland, I had no group try to flee, so I didn't really have a chance to run that way. Krilla's ritual we talked about. That is really an awesome cinematic too when the ritual activates. So try at the end to kind of get the undead, the overwhelming waves of undead. Trying to describe more and more and more in the distance. The betrayal ended up happening right before wave 2 came when I ran this both times or 3 times. And so when one or more of the gray dogs tried to flee, I would have like undead overwhelm them. Party could see the undead ripping them apart and just foreshadowing what their fate's going to be if they don't perform that ritual. And then they all do the ritual, fires, and it's a climatic end to the adventure. Great adventure. Everyone loved the adventure. It is long, so be prepared to run as fast as you can, because it took me just over 4 hours, and usually I do AL adventures in about 3 hours. So definitely a long adventure, but I loved it. The author was James Introcaso, and thanks to James and Will and Sean and all the crew working on these adventures, they are a lot of fun. For the Adventure League player or admins, if anyone's listening, I love how they do the adventure records in Oracle of War. Each adventure record looks like this. It's got a section that every character gets some amount of gold, and then they get to choose one or more rewards. And so that's a way of like dividing equally the treasure found, but not having everyone grab a potion necessarily. They have to weigh their choices on, do I want a potion, do I want a magical item, etc., because they're only getting one of those items. I really like how that's working. I really like how the legacy events are working, and also the benefits and such. This one doesn't tell you what it is, but the previous ones before were pretty cool on how their benefits acted. So keep it up, guys and gals. Great adventure series. I can't wait to run the next one. Looking forward to it. The next one's going to be, I'm going to run the Epic one more time, and then I'm going to run the third protocol after that. The Epic should be on 5.5, and the third protocol on 5.12. All right. Bye, everyone.